All right, so what kind of things do you talk about? What do you, just somebody break the ice. What do you love the most about your phone? Yes, sir. Watching, how many of you just love scrolling through videos, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever? Yeah, I love that too. That's probably what my son loves the most about his phone too. He's on YouTube all the time, just watching all sorts of nonsense. What else? What do you love about your phone? Yeah, Jake.
Learn new things on it.
Absolutely. You can learn new things on it. We actually, every single one of us that has a smartphone, we have a supercomputer at our hip all day long. We have access to all the world's knowledge just at the touch of our finger. That's a pretty amazing thing if you think about it. No other human beings in the history of human beings have had access to as much information as you and I have access to. And that's a great thing. It could also be an overwhelming thing at times too, to have access to just so much information. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. What else do you love about your smartphones? Yes?
Communication with family and friends on business.
For sure, for sure. It's funny, my 81-year-old father-in-law has a flip phone. I don't know how he got it. Don't know where it came from. But somehow he got his hands on an old school flip phone. And my kids, especially my 13-year-old, bless her heart, she's like, well, she actually said this at Christmas time this year. She's like, well, Grandpa doesn't have a phone. I'm like, well, what do you mean, babe? Of course, yes, Grandpa has a phone. She's like, no, he just has one of those things that you can talk on. He doesn't have a phone. She literally said that to me. She just has one of those things that you talk on. Yeah, believe it or not, phones are good for like talking to people and stuff. Imagine if things were reversed, where texting came before voice. Like so the first phones were just text. And then all of a sudden, some entrepreneur came along and he said, I figured it. I've cracked the code. Now we can actually use our own voice to talk on these devices. Everybody would be like blown away by that, right? Like, oh my goodness. But now, like when somebody calls you and wants to have a conversation like on the phone, a lot of us are like, what's your problem? Like, that's weird. Why can't you just text me, What else do you love about your phones? Keeps you organized. How so? Yeah, it keeps my life organized. I don't know, I have a hard time remembering my life before my calendar on my phone, where my phone just beeps and buzzes and tells me when I need to move on to the next thing. What do you hate about your smartphone? Yeah, Emily.
It is big enough that I can't text with one hand.
Yeah? Well, you need to either get bigger hands or a smaller phone. There's a solution for that. So did you get one of those giant, like, the tablet phones? My brother has one of those. It's obnoxious. Oh, poor thing. What else do you hate about your phones? Yes, Jake. Oh, go ahead. The government. Yeah, the government can track us. Or if you're on TikTok, the Chinese government can track you. That happens too. Well, I mean, more broadly speaking, like one of the things that a lot of people don't like about their phones is the lack of privacy that we have now. And a lot of that's just kind of our fault, actually. We have these phones at our disposal at all times, and we feel an imperative to overshare. And if there's anything at all happening that's mildly interesting in our life, we feel some sort of weird obligation to put it online on display for the whole world to see. So we're actually surveilling ourselves. We're making everything about ourselves public for display. And that's made a lot of people feel just really ill at ease with their phones. Jake, what were you going to say?
It's easy to be so connected and so isolated.
Yeah, that's one of my big points that I make when it comes to talking about this stuff. Like, one of the things that your phone is really good at, and you brought this up, it's really good at connecting us, right? Especially connecting us to people at a great distance. But connection is not the same thing as community. Connection is fine as far as that goes, but it's really hard to have real, authentic community with other people through a digital device, through a virtual device. I mean, sometimes we just need three-dimensional physical people in our lives. And if our only relationship with people is through sort of a virtual cord or a virtual environment, it's a great way to start to feel more lonely and more isolated. Because actually that minimal connection that we experience with a person through Facebook or through Instagram or whatever, like we do experience a minimal connection with them, right? So I can see somebody's post and I can click like, or I can respond to it, or whatever, or I can post something and they can like it and respond to it or whatever. So we do experience a type of connection with people through social media, but that connection is so slight that it actually leaves us feeling more lonely because it reminds us of just how incomplete it is. And that's one of the reasons why the more time you spend on social media, the more you tend to feel lonely and isolated, because you're getting a taste. You're getting a small taste of connection, but the taste just reminds you of how hungry you are. And if you don't have those real physical connections with people, it'll leave you feeling really isolated and alone. It's sort of like, I mean, again, it's sort of like if you're really, really hungry, right? And somebody says, "Oh, you're really hungry? Okay, here's a couple bites of food." Okay? Well, that actually might make us feel more hungry, more miserable, because it just reminds us of how much we really need to eat or how much we want to eat. And that's kind of what social media does to us at times. Somebody else, what do you hate about your phones? Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the infinite scrolling. That was one of the early inventions of social media companies like Facebook. Was they came up with what they call the infinite scroll, where you can literally just scroll forever until your thumbs get tired, and you'll never really run out of content. And it's a way that they own your eyes and they own your attention. And it's also one of the ways that they create addiction. Actually, I have a statistic here. This is from, where's it at? This is from a book by a guy named Adam Alter. And this is going back years ago. So this is from 2016. So whatever statistic I'm about ready to give, it's way out of date now. But in 2016, half of teenagers, according to surveys, felt addicted to their mobile devices. Like they had an actual addiction where if you took away their mobile devices, they started to feel withdrawal symptoms. So that was in 2016. I've got to imagine that it's much higher than that now. Alter, in the same book, claims that there were 280 million smartphone addicts in the world, which would amount to the 4th most populous country in the world. So yeah, very addictive. This book that he wrote, it's called Irresistible, and it's a really fascinating book. Some of you care, some of you don't. But basically, what he shows in this book is that these cell phone companies, especially the software companies that design apps like Candy Crush and games like that, any of you like those games? They actually employ the same psychological techniques that casinos use to keep people sitting at the slot machine just for hours on end. It's the same exact thing, and that's why people get addicted to their phones, because your phone is actually designed for addiction. Anybody else? What do you hate? Yeah. It does, yeah. As a dad who has replaced probably about 8 screens in my years of my fumbling kids, yes, it is annoying. Finally, I told my daughter, I bought you 2 screens. That's the last screen that I'm going to buy. The next screen you're buying. But yeah, it is expensive. What else? Anybody else? Yeah. A lot of it is inaccurate. Not only is it inaccurate, it's just too much. Like we're drowning in information, right? We have all the world's information at our fingertips, but we don't know how to sort it all out. And what we tend to do is we just go with the path of least resistance. Whatever is the first response on Google, we take that as the gospel truth. And so we end up with a shallow understanding of things rather than a deep understanding of things. Little bit of trivia. So any of you like games like Trivial Pursuit or like crossword puzzles or stuff like? Yeah, I like crossword puzzles. Do you know when these were invented? This is interesting, at least to a nerd like me. These things were invented in the late 1800s. And they were invented after the invention of the telegraph. Because the telegraph, now for those of you who don't know what a telegraph is, a telegraph was just it came before the telephone, okay? So for the first time, people in like Joplin, Missouri could have real-time or somewhat real-time information about things that were happening all over the country and all over the world. And so people's understanding of the news started to change. It used to be that if you were a person who lived in Joplin, Missouri, the only news that you really knew about or cared about was stuff that was happening in your own backyard. But when the telegraph came along, all of a sudden you had this world of new information and ideas coming at you every day. And so trivia, like crossword puzzles, was invented as a way of using that extra information that people had. So there were all these people that were learning all these new things. Well, I can't do anything with this information, don't know what to do with it. Well, here's a game. Here's a game that you can play to put this trivial information to work. And so it was a way of dealing with all this excess information. Now we're just overwhelmed and we're drowning in information. And we literally don't know what to do with all the information that we have. And it's making a lot of people susceptible to misinformation. It's also making a lot of people very anxious. Because there's so much information out there, I feel like I'm drowning in it. And there's like bad news everywhere that I look, right? And so every time I doom scroll on social media, I'm learning all these things that make me very anxious, very nervous, very sad. And it's having a negative effect on our mental health, all this information that's available to us. I don't think that we were designed to know as much as we are able to know with our smartphones. And I think that it's kind of making us crazy a little bit. Okay, well let me just kind of dive in. Is the PowerPoint ready to go? Okay, there we go. If you can go to the next slide, Jared. Jared's going to be walking through this with me. So here's what here's what I'm emphasizing this evening. It's what some people call Web 3.0. So here's a brief history lesson. Web 1.0. The older folks in the room, myself included, you'll remember Web 1.0. This is when you would have to physically relocate yourself to a computer. You would have to log onto the internet at painfully slow speeds. You'd have to kick your older sister off the phone with her boyfriend so that you could get online because you had to have a telephone line in your house to get onto the internet, okay? And that was Web 1.0. That was like my high school years, or towards the end of my high school years. That's when the internet was starting to become a thing. And especially around 1995, the internet was becoming more and more a thing. If you went to the store and you bought a computer, there was a good chance that it would come with internet access. Everybody was really excited about this, but they didn't really know what to do with the internet. It was just kind of this quirky, weird thing. And there were actually TV commercials at this time that advertised your ability to get online, find an answer, and get offline as quickly as possible. That's the way they were selling the internet, because they weren't designing it for you to be on it at all times every day of your life. They were designing it in such a way that you log on, get your information, and then log off. That was Web 1.0. Now Web 2.0, this came about kind of in the late 90s, the early 2000s. This was when social media started to be invented, blogs started to be invented. So in other words, when I first got on the internet, only the weirdos were actually contributing content to the internet. It was very uncommon for anybody to have like their own web page. But that all started to change in the late 90s and early 2000s. All of a sudden you have social media, you have MySpace, eventually you have Facebook, you have all these websites where now, I get to contribute. YouTube, I get to contribute content to the internet. And that was a brand new thing. A brand new thing where now everybody, Doesn't matter. I mean, you could be a 13-year-old kid living in Joplin, Missouri, and you could contribute content to the internet. And that was a radical change from what came before. The biggest change, though, was with Web 3.0, and this is when the smartphone came along. And what the smartphone did was the smartphone took the internet and it made it mobile. And so now we have all of this information at our fingertips. We are always on and always connected. This was not my experience growing up. My experience growing up was I wasn't always connected. Nobody was. But now, especially talking to the front of the room here, this is your everyday experience. You are always connected. We are always connected through the internet. So we've basically become like cyborgs, where we're plugged into a network at all times and in all places. And I think it's changed. It's shifted what it means for us to be human beings in this world. And I don't think we think about that as much as we probably should. That our experience of being human has been radically shifted because we are always on and we are always connected to these devices. And there's some good things about that, obviously. We've been talking about that. There's also some negative things about that, which we need to acknowledge. If you can go to the next slide. A lot of people have been talking, especially in recent years, about the effects that phones especially are having, especially on our teenagers, but not just on our teenagers. So you have like the Atlantic magazine, big article that came out about last year, a year before. Why are American teens so sad? And the statistics are pretty overwhelming in this regard, that American teenagers are really struggling with their mental health. And so the Atlantic wrote an article on this, and one of the conclusions that they came to was there's a direct relationship between the mental health of teenagers and the amount of time that they spend online, especially on social media. You have a woman named Jean Twenge who wrote, and parents in here especially, if you have a kid who's between the age of like 10 and 20, you need to pick up a book by Jean Twenge. It's just called iGen. It is the book on this kind of plugged-in generation. And her conviction is that smartphones, I mean, this is a pretty dramatic way of putting it, but smartphones are destroying a generation. That the introduction of smartphones into teenagers' lives are having all sorts of negative effects that we need to start paying attention to. Another article in the Atlantic, Why the Past 10 Years of American Life Have Been Uniquely Stupid. That's a really good article, and one of the things that they talk about in that article is just the proliferation or the expansion of social media and what that's doing to the way that we even communicate with each other. And our communication has been broken, ironically enough. Our communication has been broken by being over-connected with each other on social media. How smartphones hijack our minds. I'm going to talk about that article here more in a second. Here's my point, though. This is kind of something that's on everybody's mind right now. Everybody wants to know about the effects that smartphones are having, especially on kids. You can go to the next slide. So just some stuff on screen time. I know that's super small, so I'll kind of make sense of this. On the left side of the screen, these are just statistics from 2015, 2019, and 2021 showing screen time first among tweens and then second among teenagers. And that slide there on the scale there on the right, what that says is that in 2021, the average American teenager was spending 8 hours and 39 minutes every day just on entertainment screen time. Just on entertainment screen time. So that doesn't include the amount of time that you might be spending on a computer, for instance, doing homework for school. So that's like a full-time job. You realize that, right? 8 hours a day, you're spending just, whether it's on your phone, playing video games, whatever, over 8 hours every day just staring at a screen for entertainment purposes. And that's in 2021. The statistics, the QR code over here on the right shows you the post-COVID statistics. COVID sent our screen time through the roof. And some of that has come a little bit back down to earth now, moving past COVID. But COVID also instilled certain habits in us that have proven really hard to break. And so screen time still remains at all-time highs, especially amongst teenagers. Just some other things that's not on the slide. These are some things that just kind of blew me away. Let's see. 40% of children between 0 and 8 have their own tablet. That's a lot. Teenagers, let's see. 84% of teenagers have a smartphone. That's up from 67% in 2015. So most teenagers now have a smartphone. 69% of parents and 78% of teens check their phones at least once per hour. Now, that's a little bit outdated. I think it's much higher than that now. That's statistics from a couple years ago. 56% of teenagers associate the absence of their cell phone with at least one of these emotions: loneliness, being upset, or feeling anxious. Additionally, girls are more likely than boys to feel anxious or lonely without their cell phones. So in other words, just the very thought of being without my cell phone makes me anxious, or it makes me feel alone, or at risk. I have an assignment for one of my classes at school where students have to take an hour-long walk without their smartphone. They have to leave it behind at their house or at their dorm. And the first semester I required that assignment, I literally had students coming up to me in a panic. They weren't even sure that that was something that was safe or allowed. I had students that were genuinely, is it okay for me to take a walk without my what if something happens? What if people don't know where I am? And I kind of laughed at first, but then I felt really sad about that, because people have been taking walks outside without phones literally for all of human civilization until like the last 20 years. But that's how tethered to our devices we've become. 51% of teenagers say they often or sometimes find their parent to be distracted by their own cell phone when they're trying to have a conversation with them. Parents, are you guilty of this? So 1 out of every 2 kids like, yeah, my mom has a problem with her phone too. It's not just me. 72% of parents feel that way about their teenage children. So trying to have a conversation with my kid and the phone is just constantly getting in the way of that conversation. Let's see, what else do I want to add here? I'm going to pick on the teenagers. Do any of you wake up in the middle of the night to check your phone? Nobody's willing to admit it if you do. 36% of all teenagers are waking up at least once during the night to check their phones. Kind of crazy. Last thing I'll say here, research indicates that around 3% of computer, tablet, or smartphone use among teenagers is spent in creative activities. That means the overwhelming amount of time that we spend on our phones is spent just consuming other entertainment or in communication. Now, next time you see an iPhone commercial especially, pay attention to how they sell you the iPhone. Or not just an iPhone, any phone. They sell you the phone promising creativity. Look at all the things you'll be able to create and do with this device. Everybody's a cinematographer all of a sudden, making movies, right? Or making these carefully edited pictures or whatever. You're going to be a content creator with this phone. But that's actually a lie. Only about 3% of the time you spend on your phone is in creative activities. Most of it is just passive consumption. So basically what your phone is doing is your phone is turning off your creative juices. And it's just turning you literally into a passive consumer. So if you can go to the next screen here. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. Three laws of technology, just really quick. First of all, you are what you worship. And here's what I mean. Now, this is a devotion or a discipleship comment, okay? You see the equation up here. Time plus proximity plus imitation leads to a shared resemblance. And that's with anything in your life. That's with anything. I'm not just talking about technology here. I'm talking about anything. You spend a lot of time with something or someone in their presence, in close proximity, and you imitate them. Eventually, guess what? You're going to start to look like them. Time plus proximity plus imitation leads to a shared resemblance. Your friends in your life, that's how it works. You spend a lot of time with that girl, with that guy. You're in close proximity with each other, you imitate each other, eventually you start to look like each other. Time plus proximity plus imitation leads to a shared resemblance. If we are spending, I won't say you, I'll say we, if we are spending hours of every day just staring into this black rectangle, then what that means is eventually your life will start to match the things that you see on your phone. In other words, you cannot expect to use a device that much and not be changed as a result. Because time plus proximity plus imitation leads to a shared resemblance. You become like that which you worship. And by worship, I mean whatever you're placing at the center of your life. You're going to become like that thing. Second law is that the tool uses you. So think of it this way. So think of a basic tool like a hammer, okay? We think of a hammer like a hammer is something we use to pound in a nail, right? It's a basic tool. We use the tool to pound in a nail. But actually, that hammer is changing you as a consequence of using it. It's changing you. It's affecting you. So you start to have certain expectations that fit that hammer. So that hammer dictates to you what is possible or what is impossible. Or think about your car. A car isn't just something that gets you from point A to point B. The car actually changes you as a result of being in your life. Like your assumptions about what space means, or what a mile looks like, or what it means to just go to like everything about your imagination changes because of the presence of that technology in your life. And so the same is true about your smartphones. Just the presence of that amount of technology in your life, it's going to change you. It's not going to leave you alone. It's going to make you a particular kind of person. And then number 3, the difference between growth and conformity is your brain. All I'm doing this evening is I want to get you to think. I'm not the type of person that stands up here and says, you know what, I've got 5 principles. You need to adopt these 5 principles for your life and everything will be fixed. Don't worry about it. I don't think that's realistic. Instead, I think we just need to think through what might our technology be doing to us that we need to be aware of. What might our technology be doing to our kids that we need to be aware of? You can do the next slide. Okay, so real quick. If we become like the tools that we use, if our tools mess with us, if they change us, then it might be good to think, well, in what ways might my phone be changing me? What type of person does my phone want to turn me into? Okay? And that's what you see over here on the left side. Your phones in particular value at least 3 things. Access, first of all. Have any of you ever gotten a little bit cranky with your parents because they take you on a trip somewhere and there's no cell service and the Wi-Fi is spotty? Okay, have you ever gotten cranky with your parents because of that? We've gone on vacation before, and it's always annoying to me. My kid's first question whenever we get to the place where we're going is, what's the Wi-Fi password? You have the Wi-Fi password? I need the Wi-Fi password. Because it's like we can't live without access to this technology. We can't live without access to the internet. So access becomes something that it becomes an assumption for us. Number 2, speed. Not only do we want access, we want it as fast as possible. If the Wi-Fi is just a little bit slow, we get cranky, we get irritable. We want access, and we want as fast access as possible. Y'all would never have lived during the dial-up era, okay? You would click on a link, you'd leave the room, make yourself a sandwich, have a conversation with mom, come back to the room. Maybe that website would have loaded up by that point. But we demand not just access, but we want that access to be fast, right? Interruption. Your technology has trained you and me to be chronically interrupted, such that we can't stand in line without sort of instinctively reaching for our phones and scrolling while we're standing in line. Heaven forbid we have to wait in line and just be bored, even for a second. Can I be honest? We can't even go to the bathroom without getting our phones out. And we are addicted to this distraction. We're addicted to the interruption. All day long, we have things flashing up on our screen telling us, click on me, this is urgent, this is important, you need to take care of this right away. And almost always it's not important. Almost always. But we're sort of trained for interruption. Now you compare that on the right-hand side to emotional formation values. What's more important than access is wisdom. One of the things I tell my own kids is that the one thing your phone will never be able to give you is wisdom. It'll give you all the information in the world. It'll give you too much information, but it won't give you wisdom. Wisdom comes through living life observantly, observing your life, conversing and actually talking to people who have different experiences than you, who are older than you, asking them for their guidance. That wisdom doesn't come by looking at a phone screen. Wisdom comes from actually living your life. But if all you're doing is living your life on your screen, what you're actually never developing is wisdom. Number 2, patience. I don't know of a single person who has reached emotional and spiritual maturity in their life without cultivating patience, without learning how to wait. But our technology trains us to not want to wait. I sometimes wonder about a whole generation that is raised on Google, what their relationship with God is going to be like. Because I ask Google questions, they get me an answer in less than a second. I ask God questions, and sometimes I have to wait. Years, decades even. There's this woman named Sherry Turkle, who's an MIT, she teaches psychology at MIT. She's got a really weird life. So her whole area of expertise is in what they call robot psychology, which is basically how we turn the robots into our life into persons. It's a psychological trick that we play on ourselves, like Siri, for instance. You know, Siri is not a real person. You know that, right? But our brains play this psychological trick where we start to treat this computer program as a person. So that's kind of what she studies. But she said she did a interview of a 13-year-old boy in like 1995. And she asked this 13-year-old boy about his relationship with his father. And he said, oh, me and my dad, we get along great. We have a great relationship. She said, why? Why do you have a great relationship? Oh, my dad, he's just like me. He doesn't have it all figured out, but he helps me figure things out, you know? He's right alongside of me, helping me to figure out problems in my life. She interviewed another 13-year-old boy 20 years later. Asked him the same question. What's your relationship like with your father? And he says, we don't really get along very, very well. We don't talk that much. Oh, that's too bad. Why don't you talk very much? And he said, well, the reason we don't talk very much is that he doesn't have it all figured out. He doesn't have all the answers. And I've just found it's easier for me to go to YouTube or to go to Google to get the answers that I need. And so it was a heartbreaking story, but it's basically, it demonstrates just how much technology is adjusting what our expectations are when it comes to speed. We just want the answers right now, as quick as possible. And then thirdly, meditation. It's okay to be bored. The most successful geniuses in history have learned what it is to be bored, because in boredom comes great insight. But if you're never allowing yourself to be bored, you're denying yourself the ability to have that great insight. Go ahead to the next screen. Next screen. There you go. So I'm going to move through this really quickly, okay? Really quickly. So what kind of person does our tech create? Already been talking about some of this. The first thing is distracted. The only point I want to make here, this is a fascinating study that was done. I forget who did it. But So they took college students. College students are wonderful to experiment on. They took college students and they divided these students into 3 different groups. And the first group, all these students were taking the same test, okay? It was a test that they weren't prepared for, that they hadn't studied for, but all of them were taking the same test. The first group had to physically leave their phones in another room as they're taking the test. The second group had to leave their phones on the floor underneath their desk while they're taking the test. So out of sight, but still in their physical presence. The third group took the test with their phones on their desk next to them. Now, none of them were accessing their phones. None of them were looking at their phones. But the group that took the test with their phones in the other room scored 30% better than the group that had the phones on their desk. And what they concluded from this is that the very fact that your phone is present with you is a distraction. Because you're kind of wondering, well, what's going on there? Somebody text me? Somebody like my Facebook post? Somebody like my Instagram? Like you're constantly kind of distracted, wondering about what's going on in your phone, and you lack the ability to focus on what's right in front of you. And sometimes it distracts us from relationships. So we actually find ourselves having conversations with other people like this. Oh yeah? Really? Okay. I've seen people out on dates, husbands and wives. They're sitting at the same table together, finally enjoying a night out, having a nice meal, and they're both just sitting there like this, you know? And we've been conditioned to just be distracted through our devices. All right, next slide. Depressed. So a lot of information on this. The top part says that 8th graders who are heavy users of social media increase their risk of depression by 27%, while those who play sports, go to religious services, or even do homework decrease their risk significantly. This is from Jean Twenge, her book iGen. And she says, listen, it's incontrovertibly true that the more time you spend on watching a screen, especially on social media, the more mental health problems you will have. She says, that's at the bottom of the screen there, she says, if you're going to give advice for a happy life, it would be straightforward. Put down the phone, turn off the computer or iPad, and do something, anything that does not involve a screen. It's pretty definitive. And ladies, I'm sorry, it affects you more than it affects young men. The statistics are pretty consistent on this. Matter of fact, since the year 2009, this just came out. Since the year 2009, ER visits for teenage girls for self-harm have doubled since 2009. Now, we can't say that that's all the fault of smartphones or social media, but it is certainly a contributing factor. That our digital tethers are making us unwell. Can I give you, I'll tell you exactly how this works. So you're a 16-year-old girl. It's Friday night. You have nowhere to go. Nobody asked you to go out that night. You have nowhere to go. So you're just bumming around the house, wearing sweatpants, eating Cheetos, okay? And you're in your room scrolling through Instagram. And it's not very long before you stumble across a picture of that girl. You know who that girl is. I don't have to tell you her name. That's that girl, right? And she's with that guy. And they're out somewhere having a great time, apparently. They're dressed nice. She's got her hair done up real nice, looks good. There's some people in the background, looks like they're at a party somewhere. I mean, they're just living their best life. And then you look at yourself and you're like, I'm a loser. What is wrong with me? And so you double tap it, you like it, because you feel an obligation to do that. But you don't really like it. You actually feel horrible about yourself. Because what Instagram does to you is it causes you to compare your average moment to someone else's best moment. A moment that they have carefully selected and edited for public consumption. And so you compare your average moment to their greatest moment, and yes, of course you're going to feel worse about yourself. Of course you're going to feel lonely. You're going to start to feel more depressed. And you think, well, maybe I'll just keep scrolling. If I just keep scrolling, I'll feel a little bit better, right? And of course you don't feel better because the scrolling is a part of the problem. And so and I'm sorry, it does tend to affect girls more than it affects guys. Guys spend more time playing video games and on YouTube. Now that's got its own problems, right? But as far as the mental health consequences of social media, it seems to affect adolescent girls more. Next slide. Disenchanted. Here, this picture on the right, I love and hate this picture. So this is from the Berlin Holocaust Memorial, okay? And if you go to the Instagram page for the Berlin Holocaust Memorial, it'll be picture after picture just like this. Influencers, or just random people, going to this Holocaust Memorial and taking selfies to put on Instagram. And so they've taken a place that should be a very solemn, sacred place, and they've turned it into just a place where they can promote themselves. Say, look at me. And the problem with a lot of our devices, the problem with our smartphones, is that we have such quick access to our phone and to social media that everything in our life is seen through the lens of consumption. We turn ourselves into a product to be consumed by other people. And so there are no sacred times. There are no sacred moments. There are no sacred people. I give my students a hard time about this. Sometimes it offends them, but that's okay. Like, you don't need to broadcast to the world that moment where she says yes. What if you just made that a private moment between the two of you? Not everything has to be on public display, but our smartphone sort of disciples us to be these always public people. No matter where we're at, we get to be at a Holocaust memorial and we're thinking, well, how can I make this about me? You can't even eat breakfast without thinking, man, I wonder if the world needs to see my bacon and eggs this morning. Put up the next screen. Yeah. So this is from a blog. A guy he's a professional blogger. He travels the world taking pictures at amusement parks. And this is from the same amusement park in both pictures from China. And the one in 2010, you see it's a bunch of parents watching their kids ride a children's ride at this park. And all the parents are smiling and laughing and having a great time watching their kids enjoying the day. In 2017, same park, same ride. Look at how the expressions have changed. Everyone now is camped out behind a phone, watching their children through the mediation of a device. And what it's done is it's robbed them of the joy of being in the moment. Because literally, now the moment is mediated. You're not watching the kid, you're watching the kid through the device. And it's a way of stealing joy from us. All right, next slide. Next slide. Defensive. So this is a story on the right. This is a story of a teenage girl from Tennessee, got a full ride scholarship to the University of Tennessee for cheerleading as a high school senior getting ready to graduate. The moment she went online and announced that she got this full ride scholarship, a boy that she was graduating with posted a video of her when she was a 14-year-old freshman singing a rap song, and the rap song had a racial slur in it. And he held on to this video for 4 years, waiting for the right time to post it. Posted it after she made this announcement. The University of Tennessee stripped her of her scholarship, stripped her of her admissions. She lost it all because of a video that she made when she was 14. And a lot of teenagers especially, they testify to the defensiveness that they have now. They feel this tension. I have to post everything, but I'm so worried if I post the wrong thing, am I going to be bullied? Am I going to be attacked? Am I going to be canceled? And it makes us into very defensive people. Next slide. Disintegrated. Digital technology has given us a buffered identity. We don't really know who we are anymore. Are we the same person online that we are when we're not online? What is our true identity? And some people are so confused, in fact, that they're making their physical identity try to match their virtual identity. So there's an actual thing called Snapchat dysmorphia, where people are going to plastic surgeons to have plastic surgery to match their favorite Snapchat filters so that their physical appearance more closely aligns with the way they see themselves digitally. Now, that's a pretty extreme example, obviously, But I think many people do struggle with the disintegration of living our lives so much online. Next slide. Disconnected. We're very disconnected from each other. We live in bubbles, isolated from each other, even though ironically we're on social media that promises us to be connected. We still find ourselves being very disconnected from people, especially people who we might disagree with. We just isolate ourselves in our own little digital bubbles. Next slide. So this is the last slide, I think. So I'm not real keen on giving directives about here's how to fix technology in your life. But I can give you maybe some guidance here that might help. So a few things about digital technology and parenting. First of all, and I'm talking to the parents in the room especially, model the type of behavior that you want to see. And that's true of everything, right? That's true of just being a parent in general, but especially when it comes to proper use of digital technology. If you're upset with your kid being on their phone all the time, you might want to look at your own personal habits too, and just reflect on whether or not they might be imitating your own digital habits. Number two, actually the next two things kind of together. Remember that your student's smartphone is both an appendage and a place. They're not trying to be rude. This is the way that they've kind of been discipled by the culture, to see their smartphone as an extension of who they are. And so rather than wagging the finger, you probably just need to engage with them and get them talking about the experience and talking about what is this constant use of your what is it doing to you? Have you reflected on that? Have you thought about that? Can I help you with that? But just wagging your finger at their smartphone, probably not going to be an effective means of intervening in their use of it. I like this. Teach digital virtues. Be obvious and be intentional. So there are two paths that we could choose. Neither one of them makes us a very virtuous person. One path is total abstention over here. So I'm taking away your phone. We're getting rid of this social media. You don't need it. Just throw it in the trash. The other path over here is total indulgence, like no discipline or self-control whatsoever. The problem with both of those approaches is that they don't really teach virtue. I think it's a better approach to say, listen, let's talk about this. I know it's probably not a realistic thing for me to say you're never going to be on social media, because eventually you will be on social media, or you're never going to have a smartphone, because eventually you're going to have a smartphone. I need to prepare you as a parent to have virtue as you're using those devices, so that you are prepared to be a person of self-control, to be a person who is loving, who is charitable to others. Teach those digital virtues. Create sacred times, places, and people. No phone zones are really, I think, helpful as families. What are those times? What are those places? What are those people where the phone actually has to go bye-bye? Create no phone zones in your life. Create no phone zones in your homes. Be disruptive. Do things that are disruptive to digital habits. Go on vacation from your phone. Take a day off from your phone. Have a weekly Sabbath from your phone. Just do disruptive things. You know, here's a really basic thing that I've started to do. It's amazing. This is so basic. It's so easy, but it makes such a big difference. Leave your phone in another room of the house. Just do it. I guarantee it'll change your world. Start leaving your phone in another room at the far end of the house. You will not miss your phone nearly as much as you think you will. And what you also won't do is you won't get out your phone and fiddle with it every single moment of the day. If you just physically get it out of your presence and leave it in a different part of the house, that's a great first step. And then remember, all things are permissible, not all things are beneficial. So there are some good things about phones. There are good things about social media. But we also have to be wise and savvy enough to recognize that not all things are beneficial for us either. I'm at 7:35, so that's right at about an hour. And I feel like I've talked really fast. But do y'all have any questions or comments or anything that you'd like me to expand on based on anything that I said? Yes.
In one of the beginning slides, you talked about, now you made me stop, I can't think now. About worshiping the phone, about, it was the three things that,
Time plus proximity plus imitation.
okay, well, explain the imitation thing. How do you imitate your phone?
Okay, I'll tell you how you imitate your phone. That's a good question. So let's take the Facebook experience, for instance. Facebook gives us certain expectations for relationships, right? So here's the expectations that Facebook gives us for relationships. Relationships are about my convenience. So Facebook allows me to drop in and drop out of relationships based on my needs, based on my convenience. So, let's see what so-and-so is up to. Okay, get on Facebook, check it out, and get off Facebook. So it trains us to actually bring those expectations to relationships. Real relationships, we know, are much messier, right? Real relationships are not based on my own personal convenience. But social media relationships are almost entirely about my personal convenience. So what happens is if I am using Facebook all the time, eventually that flips a switch in my mind and starts training me to see all my relationships through that lens, that relationships are about my own personal convenience. And I learn to imitate that. I'll tell you another thing. Now, this isn't as true on Facebook. It's more true on a platform like Twitter. But it also trains us to see a person as just their comment on social media instead of as a complex, complicated person who's living a life offline as well. So in other words, I learned to see people just through that moment in time, that one thing that they say, and I judge them accordingly as a result. So what I mean is social media, you use it enough, it sort of resets what you come to expect in a relationship. And if we're not careful, we bring that expectation with us into all of our relationships. And so the more time that you spend on that platform, the more you have to be cautious about bringing those expectations to other relationships off the platform. Does that make sense to you? Okay. Oh, yeah, it's very subtle. It's very subtle. Sherry Turkle, I mentioned her. She's the robot psychologist. She said, actually, one of the things with robot psychology is eventually, have any of you ever intentionally been mean to Siri or Alexa? Okay, yes. Sometimes it's kind of fun, right? So she said the problem that a lot of us have is when we're engaging in relationships through a digital device, eventually we do start to treat other people like they are robots. And we stop to care about them as people. We stop caring about their emotional needs or whatever, and we treat them, the word that she uses is dispatch. We treat people with dispatch. And it's because we're actually engaging with them through a mechanical device instead of as a three-dimensional human being. Yeah.
Is it true, like, they actually do have plastic surgeries because they don't match the Snapchat in real life?
Yeah, there's now maybe not so much in the Joplin area, but there is plastic surgeons, especially on the coast. I got that picture from a guy, a surgeon in California, who actually advertises this, that if you want to look more like your appearance on social media, we could do the surgery to make that happen. It's kind of crazy.
Chad, I wondered if you were, in your experience with your kids, or if you have any practical, like, boundaries or apps or something that you put on the phones then for protection?
I do. Again, I hesitate to give how-tos too much because every family is different and every kid is different. And as parents, we do have to obviously understand the particular needs of this particular kid. And even my 3 kids, I don't treat them all exactly the same when it comes to digital stuff. My teenage boy, he has a little bit different temptations with technology than my 13-year-old daughter does. And so, but it's something we've talked about as a family. Basically, though, I tell all parents this. listen, I get it. If you feel like your teenager needs a phone, I get it. I really do get it. I bought my 13-year-old daughter a phone for Christmas this year. I was not happy about it. I just confess, I wanted to try to make it till she was a freshman in high school. That's what we did with my other kids. But we don't have a landline at our house, and she was in after-school activities and stuff, so it just got to the point like, so the person at the store even was like, well, congratulations on getting you. And I'm like, no, this is not a good day for me. So I get it. So I'm not a person that wags my finger at all. But I do say this to all parents. You should not put a smartphone in the hand of your kid without any strict parental controls, because that's like handing them a loaded weapon. So that's one of the reasons now I know Android has some protections on it, but one of the reasons we went with Apple as a family is because their parental controls are a little bit, I think, a little bit more robust. I know there's ways to crack the code and stuff, but there were things that we were able to do with parental controls to severely limit the time that they could spend on their phones, the apps that they were able to download, the websites that they were able to go to. And so I think we have a parental obligation to, if you're putting technology in your kids' hands, you need to do the research to try to figure out what's the way that I can make this as safe as possible. And check with your kids on a regular basis. Like I have a relationship with my teenagers where I just sit them down. I'm like, hey, talk to me. I'm not trying to bring the hammer down on you. Just talk to me. How's it going? And my kids are, I'm blessed by very honest kids who tell me sometimes more information than I wanted to know. But just have those regular conversations with your kids too, and just ask them, like, I know you were struggling with X, Y, and Z. Let's talk about that. How are you doing on that today versus last year or whatever? My son, who's 18, he still has parental controls on his phone. And we just had this conversation, like, as long as you're in my house and I'm paying for your phone bill, you're going to have parental controls on your phone. He doesn't like it because he's out with his friends. It's 10 o'clock at night. All of a sudden, his phone, like, he can't do anything with his phone other than call home. But I'm like, that's the way it's going to be, you know. There's also, we had Circle in our house for a while, which is, it allows you to like turn your Wi-Fi off and on and put controls on your Wi-Fi and stuff. We used that for a little while. We don't use it anymore just because it was kind of cumbersome and it wasn't really working well for us. But I know some families have had really good experiences with that. I'll also say this, like, phones probably shouldn't sleep with your kids. They probably shouldn't be in the room at night. Probably shouldn't be the alarm clock and stuff like that. A lot of people, though, just roll their eyes at that because we've just gotten so used to, well, that is my alarm clock, or that is, you know. But what Jean Twenge says in her book is like, no, you need to actually put the phones to bed in a different room than the room that you sleep in. Otherwise, you're just distracted by it at all hours of the night. Any other questions? Yeah.
How about I know, like in sleeping, the proximity of the phone to you, about the radiation and you know, the harmful.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I have a bad feeling that if we're all going to get cancer from our phones, we're all in trouble. So yeah, I don't know. I think some of that concern is some of that might be legitimate, but I think overall, I think the physical proximity of the phone is probably okay, but it's just the constant distraction of the phone that's a problem. I will say this too. One of the things that I enjoy as a family is having those strategic Sabbaths from technology, and they're harder and harder to pull off. But just those days during the week or those days during the month where you say, okay, today we're going to put the technology aside. We're just going to do family stuff. Actually, that was one of the things about COVID that I really liked. We got into this rhythm of like Saturdays becoming kind of device free. And we'd play games, we'd put puzzles together, we'd do stuff like that. Now we've kind of fallen off the wagon since COVID, you know, and developed those bad habits again. But I think families should probably discuss, hey, what are some strategic things that we can do to make sure that our devices are not ruining our relationships? Anything else? Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you.
So before we close tonight, I did want to talk a little bit